obstacle, whatever you want to put it in, throw it into. You've got a really tight, a tight one here. Yes, that's what she said. Hey everybody, how's it going? So thanks for coming along to this Top Tips Extra episode that we're doing for ChachoLandia, because I owe you a couple, don't I? Let's be honest. So I've decided to do two more of these. One that's going to break down the first drops of the 3 main coasters that you guys have asked for, and then there'll be a second video that's coming in the future that's going to be tearing apart some of the buildings that we built since the last one we've done. So without further ado, let's get straight on with it. This time we're looking at the first drops of coasters. Now, what's first? Alright, so you guys have asked me how to do the wing overdrops on wing coasters, and actually the answer is probably easier than you may think, because they are a relatively complicated shape, but they are quite easy to pull together. And as you can see, they have a very distinctive shape. So as the train goes over here, you can see that it flips upside down and then comes round. So that's called a wing overdrop, in case you didn't know that that's what the official name is. Now, the first thing that you need to do with the wing overdrop is decide what way you are going to exit the wing, because as you can see, it doesn't exit underneath. So it's not 180 degrees, it exits either down to the right or down to the left. And whether you go down to the right or down to the left, it has to complete a full circuit like it does an inversion. And so that means that you either need to roll it this way to come down to the right hand side, or you need to roll it the other way to come down to the left hand side. So once you've decided which way you're going to go out, you then need to actually start building it. So let's go for our favourite wing coaster. We're going to go to custom, and we're going to go wing, and we're going to go Black Falcon. I'm just going to bring this. Where am I going to take this? I've run out of space. Let's just bring this up here, shall we? Come on, we don't need intersecting terrain. Play nicely. Okay, so we're going to take our station, and remember that your lift hill then needs to be the next thing that happens, so it's up to you whether you use brake sections and stuff beforehand. Now, your lift hill section, that's anywhere between 30 and 45 degrees for your wing coasters. It doesn't make much of a difference. It's all to do with the space that you've got. So for this one, or for my wing coasters, I like to keep it around 40 degrees, because that's the same as the swarms, and that's the point of reference that I know. They are capable of really, really quite tight and quite tall and quite angular. It's an actual thing, angular lift hills. Okay, so I've got it into 40 degrees, and I'm then going to take it up to the height that I actually want it, right? So for this one, I'm just going to do this as visual representation. And then at the very top, of course, it's going to level out. So I'm just going to put my snap back on, and then I'm going to take this down to 5 meters again. So I always use the 4 or the 5 meter method for my wing coasters, my inverted coasters, and everything, because it gives you just that little bit of more control. Now remember that the wing coasters, they need a slight decline at the top here, so they need to level out and decline. And the reason that they decline is so that it can maintain some speed as it goes over the actual inversion itself. And it doesn't actually stall. So I'm just going to bring this down to about 1.3 degrees, around that sort of area. So it's now on a slight decline. So it's not going to stall. I'm going to put my angle snap back on, and we now need to do our whole wing drop. So First things first, we need to decide what way we are going. If we're going this way, then we need to start rotating the track this way. But if we're going this way, then we need to start rotating the track this way. Does that make sense? Good. So I'm going to continue to use the 5 meter method for this one, and I'm going to take it to 45 degrees. I'm going to take it to 90 degrees. And we're now still on a level, right? So what we now need to do is bring this down a notch, and then we're going to rotate it down. No, sorry, we're going to bring it down 2 notches to 22 degrees, and we're going to bring it round to 135 degrees, and then we're going to need to take it down to 45 degrees, and now we need to be at 180 degrees, right? Just like that. And now we need to start the actual full-on descent. So we're going to bring it down another 2 notches, and then another 2 notches. So we're now at 90 degrees. And it's at this point that you want to start rotating your track in the direction that it's going to exit. And so we do that by using either 11.25 degrees one way or 11.25 degrees the other way. So let me just get this the right way round. So it's that way, isn't it? Because we're exiting that way. And don't forget then, because we're already at 90 degrees, we also need to bring this back 2 notches. And then if you're wanting it to be a bit more drawn out, then absolutely fine. But I'm just going to keep this at 11.25, straighten it out. And then I'm going to continue back down 2 notches. And then I'm going to go 1 notch to 45, 1 notch to 33, 1 notch to 22, 1 notch to 11.25, and then 1 notch to bring it level. And there you have your basic wing over drop. Now what you'll need to do is smooth this out. So you'll actually find you might fight with this. So this is where the autocomplete method comes into it. And just to give you a real brief understanding of how the autocomplete method is, if I delete this section of track, I've now got 4 sections of track missing. But I will eventually have an autocomplete function here, and I can just fill that in, and then it's actually going to create the same effect as the 4-meter method, but it's now only one piece of track. And this is particularly useful up here because technically I could delete this bit of track and then autocomplete that bit, and then I can delete these 2 bits of track, and I can also complete that bit, and it treats it as one. And when you smooth it, it's also absolutely fine. Now, there is also another way that you can do this that I'm just going to show you real quickly. It's the opposite. Well, it's not the opposite. It's exactly the same. It's just a shortened version of using the 4-meter method. It's where I use 8 meters instead. And that's purely for the camera purposes. It's not because it's some kind of sly little trick that you don't know about. So for this one, I'm going to take it straight to 90. Then I'm going to bring this right down to 45 degrees like this, and then 180 like that. And then I'm going to bring this down to 90. And then I'm going to start the twist, which is that way, wasn't it? And then I'm going to bring it down this way, so 112. And then I just start the process of 45. And now remember, I tell you, did I actually... No, sorry. The step before. Let me just correct that. We need to level it back out again. There you go. 0. And then we bring it back down to 45. And now because we're using 8 meters, remember that you're going to need 2 notches on this one, and then 2 notches on this one. And you've ended up with exactly the same shape. Well, apart from this bit, smooth will sort that out. But you've ended up with exactly the same shape as you had before. And there's your wing overdrop. Smooth it, and job done. Right, so I wonder, what's next? Alright, so next on our agenda is the invert drop. You guys have asked me about this one a lot. Now, this is another one of those drops that doesn't have a set rule because it depends on how your drop needs to be. I mean, look at Monster at Wonderland, for example. That breaks all of the conventions. So just because this is how a drop typically looks, it doesn't mean to say that it should look this way every single way. Use your imagination, use your design technique. But I'm going to show you how to create a drop that looks like this anyway, because you guys have asked me for it. So once again, we're just going to come back over into our spare land over here. I'm going to grab myself an invert. There we go with the invert, and I'm just going to place it above here. Okay, so for this one, as I said with the wing coaster, I always tend to use 5-meter sections for the inverts, just because of the space between the trains and everything. You don't want them clashing and everything. And if you have 4 meters and you do it a little bit too tight, sometimes your feet touch and stuff, and you don't want that. So for this one, I'm just going to take this to 33.75 degrees. Your lift hill on this one needs to be between 30 and 40 degrees, depending on the space. But remember, Wonderland breaks that tradition because Monster's lift hill, I think, is 60 degrees. It's really quite a deep, it's quite a nasty incline to have, but it's capable of doing it. Remember, it's only as good as the strength of your chains and your motors and everything. So anyway, no written rules. So I'm going to take this up and I'm just going to pop this up a couple again. There we go. Okay, right. So we're going to use the guiding principles of how to do these rather than anything that's, as I said, that's set down in any kind of rule book. So the first thing we do is we don't want to bring it out to 0 degrees level because it doesn't do that. You want to bring it down even further. So you want it down to 11.25 degrees in this one, and that's so that the train can continue to roll off the lift chain, and it reduces the stress on the chain because the motor hasn't got to do the work. The gravity is now doing it for you. So next we need to start the actual turn itself, and this is where the turn gets really weird because it turns almost instantly and drops almost instantly, but it looks weird. So for this one, I'm going to bring this down to 33 degrees and then I'm going to bring this across 22 degrees. I'm now going to start the banking, and it's only going to be 22 degrees. That's all it is for now. Now we're starting the turn, so this time I'm going to bring this down to 45 degrees. Make it 33 degrees if you want a slightly shallower turn, but this is going to be quite a tight turn. And now I'm going to bring the banking to 45 degrees, and I'm going to bring the depth, or the drop, to 45 degrees, like so. Now I'm going to continue down until I'm happy with where I'm going. So there we go. And then I'm going to level this out. So I'm going to bring it down to 11.25 degrees. But now this time I'm going to do 22 degrees on the banking, because of course we're going to be having speed by now, so we don't want whiplash and stuff. So there we go. And then I'm going to bring this back to 0 degrees, and then 0 degrees. And now we need to start leveling out, and I'll do that one notch at a time. So if we go 1, and then we go 2, and then we go 3, and then we go 4, like that. And now you can do whatever you need to, whether it's a 0G roll, whether it's vertical loop, or corkscrew, whatever you want to put it in, throw it into. You've got a really tight, a tight one here. Yes, that's what she said. So let me show you the alternative with this one then, by using the 33 one, so you can see that it's a similar thing, but it's not such a tight turn. So I've kept the top the same, so it's going to be 22 degrees, it's going to be a drop of 33 degrees, and a roll of 22 degrees, right? So we're doing that. But this time I'm going to bring it down to 33 degrees. I'm going to keep the drop at 33 degrees, but now I'm going to bank it even further to 45 here. Now we're starting the descent, right? So I'm going to keep this at 33. I'm going to keep the drop at 33, and I'm going to keep the roll at 45. And I'm just going to keep that going down until I'm at the point where I'm ready to level it out. And so now I start to do that by either 11.25, or because you're at this point, you probably could just do it to 0. But let's just do 11.25 because that's what we've done. And then we go minus 22, and then we level it out like this, and then 0, like that. And then we start our process of leveling off to 0 on the drop, like that. And so there you've got another version of the same drop. And you can, like I say, there's no rule book when it comes to this first drop. If you look at Nemesis Inferno, if you look at Banshee, if you look at Monster, they all have a curved drop, but they all have different profiles of a drop. So this is another way that you can do it. So for this one, I'm going to keep at the top exactly the same. No, I'm not actually. I'm going to make this not so shallow, not so deep. So it's minus 11 this time, and we're going to do 22 degrees, but the roll is still 22 degrees here. Now I'm going to bring this to 22 degrees, roll it to 45 degrees, and bring this down to 30 degrees. And now I'm going to bring this again into a 33 degrees, and keep that going down. And then I'm going to level this out to 0, bring this to 22, so that we're not giving the riders whiplash. And then we're going to bring this down this way, and bring it down this way, like so. And as you can see, again, it's a different shape again, but it's the same principle. It's a complete U-turn, and you're now free to do whatever you want to here, 0G roll, whatever. But it's the same principle. So ultimately, what you need to think of is what you're going to do after this, because you need to control the speed, right? So, and you need to control the forces and the whiplash going into it. So if you're going to go into something like a vertical loop, then you're going to want something slightly less intense. But if you're going into a 0G roll, then you can do something slightly more intense, because you're going to be killing the speed at the top end anyway. So anyway, that's, like I say, there is no rule book with this. Like, it's just the profiling that you want for the space that you've got, but ultimately that's the guiding principle. Now, there's one last one to show you, and that's the one where it's actually not so steep at all. So for this one, the start is exactly the same, but now I'm keeping it at 22 degrees, and I'm going to keep it at 22 degrees, but now I'm going to roll it in again, keep it at 22 degrees, and roll it in again. So I'm now at 90 degrees to my original turn, right? And now I'm going to bring it suddenly down, so it's 33 degrees, 45 degrees, and then I'm going to bring this out to 11.25 again, and bring this to 22 degrees, and then 0 degrees, and then start to level this one off, like so, and like so. And there you go. It's another it's another different variant of that profile of drop, but it's exactly the same thing. Now, if you are wondering, this is the one that Nemesis Inferno is most closely representative of. It's got a slight drop here. It banks towards the 90-degree point here and then comes down. Smoothie Smooth, by the way, will take care of this shaping. So don't panic at the fact that this looks a bit clanky and a bit rubbishy. Smoothie Smooth will take care of it. Take care of it all. Okay, so with that in mind, what do you reckon's next? So I'm going to leave this one up to you as to whether we've left the best to last, because this was certainly the most popular episode on the series. So it's the Hypercoaster. And yeah, so the Hypercoasters actually have a very different profile going on when it comes to the lift hills and the first drops. And that's because, you know, other coasters do this little pre-drop, don't they, right? So the original Hypercoasters, they have an actual shelf. So the shelf comes down this way, it levels out and then comes down. And that's all to do with the evacuation and everything of the train, so that it's got a stable place that you can evacuate if you need to. Other coasters, they do that pre-drop and then they go into the full drop, right? So the lift chain carries on beyond the 0 degrees, and that's so that it can reduce the stress. But because of the sheer speed that this is going to be building up in this section here, these Hypercoasters from B&M, they don't have this top one. And I didn't know any of that before going into this into doing this episode. I did a lot of research, so let me show you how this is built and how this is put together. So here's our Giga Coaster, right? So I'm just going to come back over to our section here and place our station. Now, of course, we know that the important bit of this is to have the correct height, so I've always got my height on, and I'm going to do it relative to the terrain that's below it, right? Because obviously you're going to go into your first drop 60 meters or 63 meters, blah 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 blah. Different debate for a different time. So for this one, I do use the 4-meter method, but I actually use, depending on the height of the coaster, either 7, 8, 9 or 10 meters. But it's the same principle as using the 4-meter method, where you do it one by one, right? So I'm going to use 6 meters for this one. Break my own rules. No, sorry, I'm going to use 7 meters. Actually, just keep it consistent. And then I'm going to take my lift hill angle to somewhere between 30 and 45 degrees. Again, Hypercoasters are capable of steep lift hills, right? So go with it. 40 degrees on this one, and then we're going to take it up, and we're going to make sure that it's the correct height. So we are looking for the golden 60-odd meters. So let's go here. I'm going to say that's 12 meters. That should be enough, right? Yeah, there we go, 60 meters. So I'm then going to bring this back down to 7, and then we're going to level it out. So it comes to 0. And as I was saying before, most other coasters then continue the drop like that, right? So that the train can continue. But these don't. They just don't do it. They just go straight to normal track, and now you start your descent. So for this one, I'm going to go straight into 33 degrees, and then I'm going to continue this down to 67. And then you just do it as steep as you need to, right? So you know that it's 81 degrees. It's the maximum angle of descent for these coasters in the game. So we're going to go to 78 degrees on this one, just so that we can do that. We're going to take it down 2 more, maybe 1 more, and then you start the process of leveling it out. Now, you need to have a really smooth and really long exit out of this drop, because you're going to be doing quite a lot of speed. So for this one, I'm going to keep it at 7 meters, and I'm just going to bring it out 11 degrees per notch, right? So we're going to keep it going that way, keep it going that way, and now we're pretty much down to the ground. Now, 63 meters at the top of the lift hill down to here. This might not be a Hypercoaster. The first drop might only be 59 meters. So you might want to consider making your sections 8 meters rather than 7. You achieve exactly the same thing, but it just means that your drop is actually longer, and you're going to guarantee that it's a hypercoaster drop. So that's just one thing to be aware of when you're using the inverted commas 4-meter method for this, is that actually your drop might not be enough. Now, the other thing that I get asked quite a lot about, and I have got it in the top tips video for the 4-meter method, but I'm going to put it in here, the lift hills, the parabolic lift hills that I do. I was going to say hyperbolic then, that's something very different. The parabolic lift hills and the shaping of those. So, of course, you're going to want to bring it up to whatever height you want it to be. So I'm going to go to 45 degrees. For this one, I'm going to take it to 56 degrees. You could go one further if you wanted to 67. There's no real thing. It's the shaping at the top that's the thing, not the angle of ascent into the hill. So I'm going to have it at 56 degrees, like this, and then I'm going to bring it down to 45 degrees. Then I bring it down to the 30 degrees, and this is where the parabolic element comes in, because now you bring it down to 11 degrees, then you bring it down to minus 11 degrees, then you bring it down again to the 33 degrees, and then down to the 45, and then down to the same angle of descent that you had the angle of ascent. And then you bring it down again, one more, like so, like so, like so, and like so. Actually, I've taken it down one too many, haven't I, with this one, with this side. It's not symmetrical, but it's okay, because it's the top bit that you want to focus on, right? It's not this bit and this bit. The parabolic bit is this top here, and that's how you do those airtime hills. And of course, if you're wanting a more drawn out airtime hill, where it's more floater than it is ejector, then that's nice and simple. You just bring it to let's say 45 degrees on this one. And then all you do is you bring it down by one, bring it down by one, bring it down by one, and then bring it back down to 0. And then you just reverse that process. So you bring it to minus 11, minus 22, minus 33, minus 44, and then you exit. Simple as that. Of course, this would be higher, right? This is this is going to kill your riders. This is going to put some serious stress on the restraints. And then minus 11, and then 0, and that's your drawn out airtime hill. But these are not entirely what B&M use, because B&M will use parabolic, which is this one here. So it doesn't matter what speed the train is going, you're wanting to be using this parabolic airtime hill. But as I said, if you want to do a drawn out airtime hill, then you can do more sustained airtime along this way. And just to remind you that in the Hypercoaster that I did for ChachoLandia, my train is always going through the top end of this crest at around about 30 mile an hour. That bit's the important bit for your G-forces. So knowing full well that your trains are going to slow down, your lift hills are going to get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter as you go along, but you should be aiming for your trains to be hitting the top of these lift hills at around about 30 mile an hour. And then that gives you the sustained G-forces that you've got. It's not going to be too much, it's not going to be too little. The ride doesn't get boring because you're going to be given the same amount of G-forces. And so that's essentially how you do the drops and the airtime hills for the Hypercoasters. Now, guys, I hope you found this one interesting. Please let me know in the comments below whether you have or not. And of course, let me know what you want me to tear apart for the buildings episode, because I haven't filmed that yet. So let me know what you want to see. But guys, thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. You know I absolutely love you. Please look after yourselves. Until we speak again, I'll see you soon. Bye bye.